All right, everybody. Thanks for joining for today's presentation on Dynamic SharePoint Forms. We're going to go ahead and get started, and we'll just jump in with some quick information for you. I'm Will Cooper. I am a SharePoint Solutions developer. I run a YouTube channel called SharePoint Smart. You can search for that on YouTube. Those are free informational, instructional videos on how to do awesome things in SharePoint and on the Microsoft 365 platform. And I also run a charting and data visualization platform called SharePoint Dashboards. I am going to present information on that after our main presentation on Dynamic SharePoint Forms. So if you want to stay around for some bonus content, that'll be at the end. To tell you a little bit about Infowise. We are all about making it simple and easy, and we're always looking to improve our tools. So we have a lot of fun in what we're doing, and we've been able to make some really awesome things to help you do what you want in SharePoint. Ultimate Forms are full solution tools. They deploy 100% inside of your SharePoint user interface. You don't have to go out and use any external tools. It's available both for Microsoft 365 and also for on-premise SharePoint. And a key aspect to these tools, you're able to build with no code. You don't have to do any kind of programming at all. Towards the end of our presentation, I am going to do a drawing for a free embroidered Infowise shirt. That drawing is available specifically for people in the US, just for postage reasons. So if you're in the US, you can enter that drawing. Okay, just a reminder, as I say, the forms that I show you, these can be built and you can do that with our tools, both for SharePoint Online and Microsoft 365, or also for on-premise SharePoint. All right, so just to kind of tell you how I think about SharePoint a little bit, it's a great platform, but in some ways it's a bit bare bones out of the box. It doesn't have everything that you want in terms of what you want to accomplish and your solutions. This is how I think about Ultimate Forms. This is really about bolstering those tools, giving you all the options you want. It really is a comprehensive tool set. It's awesome, and by adding these tools into SharePoint, you're going to find that you're much better able to do everything that you want to do. All right, now to the topic of today's presentation. And I should make a couple more comments. We do want your feedback and interaction. You can do that through the questions interface and go to webinar. Please post your questions in there. If you don't get a response right away, please don't worry. Typically, we'll answer those questions towards the end of the presentation. So please be patient, and I'll make sure that we get to you. And we will be recording this presentation, so you don't have to scramble to take notes or anything like that. We'll post this on YouTube later today. And another thing I'll mention, what I'm demonstrating today will be provided as a free template, which you can download in your own SharePoint environment. So everything that I'm showing you today's form, you can download it and see it for yourself after we get done. So that'll also be provided for you later today. All right, so on to dynamic forms. There's 10 key concepts that I want to demonstrate in the presentation. These are aspects to dynamic forms. There's things that you should strive to accomplish to create a good user experience. One key aspect is history logging. What I mean by that, oftentimes in forms, they represent only the current state of information. It will have the current status, current notes, all that type of thing. But what is lacking is information on its previous state. What came before? When was it last updated? When did it get it started? Things like that. So the ability to do tracking and show the previous state of the information is important. So that is a concept that I'll show when we get to our SharePoint form. Another is the idea of being able to do a many-to-one relationship. And for those of you who've worked with databases or access or anything like that, you know that it's very important to have this ability. And so in our form, we want to be able to have a dynamic repeating table where we can have multiple items inside of the parent record. So we'll see that in the form as well. Another one is to be able to conditionally expand the form, to have conditional sections. We want to be able to respond to the user inputs, and we don't, for example, want to show fields or information, ask about things that don't apply to the current situation. So depending on user inputs, we want to make the form change to collect more information, but only in those situations. Tab sections. This is a way to break up your form into multiple sections. I'm sure all of us can agree that it's not a very good experience to go through a very long scrolling form with a lot of fields. We need to be able to break things up into bite-sized pieces. Having a tab control to divide up your form sections lets you have those bite-sized chunks and lets you split up those fields into logical sections, and it creates a much more pleasant user experience. So having a tab interface is really important, especially for those more sophisticated forms. Electronic signatures. This is a popular topic. It has been for a long time. Naturally, approval processes are pretty much a part of any organization. And so having an ability to do some form of an electronic signature is really key. And I'll show you in these tools, it does allow you to add that very easily. Another one is connected lookups, or you could also call this cascading drop-down fields. The concept here is that when you pick from one drop-down, that will allow a second drop-down to change its options dynamically. So this way you can basically incrementally filter down to the selection you want. So we'll show that concept as well. Accordion sections. This is a similar concept to the tab control. This is a way to have expanding and collapsible sections so that your user can really just focus on the part of the information that they want. Again, a way to kind of make things a bit more bite-sized and streamline your user interface. Next one is in-context help, pop-up help. The best way for you to provide instructions for users is to provide the help right there in the interface. It's not very effective, for example, to have a help guide that you put in a PDF in a separate location. That's not great for a couple of reasons. One, it tends to not get updated. Two, it's not in context. It's over in another location. It's a bit of a hassle. People don't tend to want to go looking for that. In contrast, if you can have a nice polished way to present help information and give your instructors, give your users instruction on how to use the form right in context, that's good. A key part to that, though, is we don't want to bombard those users who already know what to do with that information. And that's why pop-up help is nice. It lets me hover over an information bubble and get that information if I need it, but if I'm an advanced user, I can skip that. It doesn't get in my way. Another one is a dynamic form summary header. This is basically taking information from the form and it persists it at the top of the form just as a reminder, summarizing the key information. So you can see that in the yellow bar on the top. And then the last one has to do with validation. Kind of the basic out-of-the-box SharePoint validation. There's really not a lot of options there. You can decide whether a field's required or not, but it doesn't allow you to be more dynamic with that in terms of having something, for example, where you say, if the status is of this value, then only in that situation I need to require this field, that type of thing. So dynamic validation is important. You need to have more sophisticated ability to do that. Okay, so that's some of our goals of our recipe for success, if you will, in dynamic forms. So now we're going to go right into SharePoint. I'm going to demonstrate those concepts to you. And we're going to start by going into the form from a user perspective and look at how the user experiences this. And then afterwards, I'm going to go into the tools and show you how easy it is to set that up. All right, so I'm on my dashboard. The list I have here is a projects list. You can see that I have some KPI indicators to help me show the progress, for example. I'm clicking here and updating that value. And then also have some checkboxes that help me show the progress of the project. This refers to the kickoff, milestones, that type of thing. And I can click on those to change that value just here from the dashboard. And then also I have project tasks. This please goes into repeating tables I mentioned. I can accordion that out. And then I've got this edit button that takes me right into the form. Okay, so there's an existing form, but let's go ahead and create our own project just so we can start right from the very beginning. All right, so right off the bat, hopefully you notice this looks nothing like out-of-the-box SharePoint Forms. Everything that you see in front of you is completely configurable, from the colors to the tabs to the grid layout in terms of having multiple fields across the page, that type of thing. The form designer tools can let you do that. So we'll talk more on that in just a little bit. All right, so I tend to do everything food oriented. That's my habit. So I'm going to call this Donuts Project. Notice the next field for Project Manager autofill my name. So we are about streamlining, making things easy. I set a rule to do that automatically. I can, if I want to, override that. I don't want to in this particular case. Here's the tab sections I was talking about. So as a user, I know to fill out this project section, but I'm not being overwhelmed. I'm not being bombarded with information that I'm not ready to get to yet. So it's a more focused user experience. Here are the connected lookups that I mentioned. So the concept here is this particular organization has offices, which they know as East, Main, Northwest, and South. And depending on the office, there are different locations there. So that's the site location field. So what I want you to notice is that when I change the location field, it's going to reload the site locations according to that location. Okay, so when I switch to main, notice the options are different. Okay, so this is kind of creating more of a smart lookup experience. This would be better than if I just had a long list of options. Lets me filter down to what I'm going to pick. Another thing I can do with that field, which is nice, I can add options in line. I can say, oh, those knuckleheads, they didn't add all the site locations. I need to add another one. I can do that inline in the form without having to worry about that. All right, there's our status. We start with not started. We'll get to these buttons in a second. I'm going to show you how that plays into history logging. Here's my project types. I've got 4 options there. Notice I've got some color to icons. Visual management is key. We want to do that. I want you to notice there's a special rule here. If I pick a training project, notice that some new fields popped into the display. Training category and course name. So that references what I mentioned in terms of having dynamic form sections that appear based on certain conditions. I was able to set a rule and say, well, if this is training, we need to collect training information, but only shows in the display if that's the case. Below, I can put in my project team, and then I can fill in this other information when I'm ready. That's all I need for the moment. Let me go ahead and save just to get the project going. Whoops. And I did that by design. I also have conditional validation. Not only do I want to show these training fields, I need to validate and make sure that they're collected. So say new employee training is the name of the course. And now I can actually save. All right, so there's my new project. Notice another thing. We have this dynamically assigned project ID. The system is doing that for us. So there's another dynamic aspect of the form. It's just automatically going to the next number. So that's PROJ.1003. And the next thing I'm going to do is I want to set this in progress. I've got these buttons here. I can add buttons that update the field information. And I want you to notice something that'll happen once I do that. Clicking that button updates the status. Notice we're to in progress. And history logging is the next thing I want to show you. Notice at the bottom of the form, it went ahead and recorded my name and a date timestamp, and it said Will Cooper updated this on January 13, 11:15 to in progress. And it's going to keep doing that every time I use these options with the button to change the status. So now I'm on hold. Now we have historical information. Somebody a week from now might want to know, well, when did that change? Who changed it? That type of thing. And it keeps appending to that history log. So I could use that concept to track any kind of information in the form I want, responding to those user inputs. All right, let's go ahead and go to our kickoff date. I'm going to assign that. And there's another dynamic validation. It didn't require this before, but now it recognizes I put in kickoff date, and it's basically saying, hey, if you did the kickoff, we need some information about that. Held meeting and compiled key documents. I'm just kind of putting in some dummy information into the rich text editor. Maybe we need approval for the project. That's the electronic signature field. There's different ways that can be configured. I have it selected for hand-drawn signature. I will just put my initials on that and save. All right, we're making some progress. So I'm going to click on that and change it. Here, I'll move it to 30. Okay, we did our kickoff, so I'm checking that off. Go back into the form. Notice now I have a dynamic header on the top. It tells me what the project is. It says the name of the location it's for and the current status. So regardless of which section I'm in, that persists across the top. It's just kind of a nice additional part of the interface to make things look nicer. The next section, we have project milestones, project notes, and this is a lot of information. What I didn't want is the long scrolling form. I just want the user to focus on what they're working on at that moment. So these are really simple. You just click on the headers and it basically expands that section and collapses down the other ones. It's just an example of another type of control you can use. Obviously, you don't have to use these things. We're just showing examples of different things you can do. And here is the hover help. Okay, so again, the thing I want to emphasize is the value to this because it really can have a major impact. The fact that you can put in really as much information as you want. You can see that I could be very lengthy with my instructions here, and that's going to be a great benefit for new users because I can tell all of them who have questions, oh, we'll just hover over the help bubbles and that's going to tell you everything I need. But if I'm an advanced user, I don't have to be bothered with that information. I'm sure you would agree it could get very annoying to have this lengthy help information embedded into the form when maybe I've already read that 5 times and I just don't need to see that anymore. So that's why that hover help is really useful. All right, so I can just put that in and save. The next concept I want to show you has to do with the repeating form section. Okay, so with projects come project tasks. People need to do things. They've got work to do. By the way, here's my flags for the kickoff meeting complete, that type of thing. So I can do it from the list view, or I can toggle it over here as well. On the files, that's just a simple drag and drop interface. I can drag files onto this. I'm sure you will agree. It's quite a lot easier than using the antiquated SharePoint attachments interface. Here's my project task. And what this does, it connects to another SharePoint list, which I already made called project tasks. And it's keeping a value in the background which tells it that these tasks are tied to this particular project. All right, so let's say compile, kickoff, notes, signed Will Cooper. Okay. And it's not started. Save that. All right, there's one task, and I can keep going with that, right? So we'll have another one. See, I have a subform. I could have whatever I want to have whatever I want in the subform as well. Okay, so I can have as many tasks as I want, and they'll just go into that repeating table. What's really nice is I don't have to go to the form to get there. I can view those tasks just by clicking on this click for details link. It will accordion expand out that section for me in the user interface. So that makes things really easy. All right, so that's really showing you some of the things going on from the user perspective. Hopefully you have some curiosity. You're wondering how this was set up. Because, of course, anybody who has used any kind of tools for a long time, they know the ins and the outs. And even if it's difficult, they know what to do. But what I want to show you is that everything I've demonstrated is really easy to set up. So we're going to cover through a lot of those options right now. We'll start with the status icons. That's one of the very easiest things to do. You can map icons to a choice field. There are 250 icons that you can choose from. And you can kind of find a logical selection, and that'll show in the interface just to make things, a bit less dull to look at. So for any of those choice fields, I'm going to tend to want to add that option. Remember that it's assigning a project ID dynamically. All I had to do to set that up is just one time say, okay, for this project ID field, I want you to enter that for me, start it at 1,000 and do that automatically. I set that up once and I never have to do anything with it again. And now we'll go to the form designer, and this is really the best part. So here's the form designer tool. What you see is what you get. Pretty much this looks exactly like it does from in the user interface. But this is how I'm doing those grid layouts, setting up the tabs, all that type of thing. And what I've got is, if I click on the tab control, any control I click on, you're going to see the settings. The in-context settings are on the right-hand side. So, I'll see changes happen real time as I make changes. Notice that changed immediately in the interface. So it's very easy to see how things are going to turn out. And then in terms of the look and feel perspective, I can set background colors and make adjustments any way I like. Maybe I don't want that to be light blue anymore. If I don't make that light green, notice I'm using drop downs. I'm not having to put in any codes or anything like that. And then I can see real time in the form exactly how it's going to turn out. In terms of doing the grid layout, I can just adjust the slider. I have this container control, and you can put containers inside of containers. And I just pick how many columns I want it to be. So there's 2 columns. Obviously that doesn't look good if I have these giant fields stretched across the screen. And so that's why it's nice to be able to do these multi-column layouts. In terms of doing things like field permissions, if you might have noticed status isn't something the users can change directly. That's because I put a permission rule in here. And the way I was able to do that, I just came in here and I set read. I just clicked on that radio button and make this read only for the new edit display. And that's all it took for me to do that. And right next to it, I have these buttons. These are action and save buttons. These do 2 things for me. They update the status, and this is how that awesome history logging is happening. So what I told it is to update the history field when these buttons get clicked. So for example, for this one, set not started, it enters this information and appends it into the history log, which is at the bottom. That's a little bit more of an advanced concept, but really easy to do. You can just copy and paste what you're doing there as you go through each one. Here's that dynamic form section that we were talking about. This is that training information, and I only need to collect that in the case that the project type is training. And the way I was able to make that work is to set a permissions role, which was really easy to do. The way I did that is to click on that add a new permissions role, and what I said is make this right if the project type's training. So all I had to do is create this condition. I said if project type equals training, make this writable. And it automatically knows the inverse of that is true, meaning it's going to not appear when that's not the case. And that's how I got that dynamic form functionality that would pop in and out of view depending on the project type that you pick. There was a second part to that, if you recall, and that's the conditional validation. Not only did I need to make those fields appear, I need to conditionally require them as well. Same type of concept. I just said I need to make sure this column's not blank. Under the condition, project type equals training. So it's going to do that validation check for me. I can even customize the error message. I can say you need to fill this in if this is training, or whatever I want, and that red text that appears below will read just like that. I just did the same thing for each of those. There's the history field. Now the system's filling this in. The user doesn't edit or change that. So that's an example of another read-only field, which is quite easy to set up. I just set a permission role and say this is read-only. And then in the milestones section, you've got the accordion sections. All I had to do to create that, I just drag this accordion control out into the interface, and it just shows you like tab 1, tab 2. I can do things like change the look and feel of that according to how I want it to work, and then set options on whether it's a collapsible type interface or other things like that. So everything you do with this is drag and drop. If I need to add a field to the form, I just pick the field on the left side, drag it onto the form, and that's all it takes. So incredibly easy to work with these tools and do these setups. All right, so let's talk about, yes, I'll lose my work. Let's talk about how you can get started. If nothing else happens after the presentation, the most important thing you could do would be to do the trial, try it out. There's a couple ways you can do that. If you go out to the Infowise Solutions website, you can click on Try Now for free. You can do online trial. That's fast. That allows you to register for your own site inside the Infowise tenant. I mean, you don't have to get help from your IT or anybody else. Much better would be to install the trial software in your own tenant. If you do that, you can download an example of the demonstration I did today. And also, it gives you unlimited access to the tools for 30 days. So that will allow you to check it out. It's completely free to do either of those two things. And the very best thing you can do is actually try this out for yourself. So I really hope that you'll take a look at that. Another thing I'd like to mention, for those of you who may feel this is a bit overwhelming or you're wondering what kind of resources are there to help you get started, we do have a full training program. You can do instructor-led training. You can start with the Kickstart training, which is a recorded video, which will show you initial steps. If you want interactive training with an instructor, you can sign up for that. That's referred to as foundation training. Another thing we have are a whole tutorial section, which are articles which give you step-by-step examples and videos on how to work within our interface. So that's something you should definitely look at. The pricing information, you can just click on the link. It'll explain that. It's a little different depending on whether you're using SharePoint Online or on-premise SharePoint. If you have questions specific to a project that you want to do, if you want to set up a meeting with the Infowise team, you should request a demo. We'll get on a call with you and we can answer questions about your project or the product and how these tools work. That costs nothing. Just shoot us a note through this form and we'll get back to you, set up a meeting, and help get those questions answered so you can move on to the next steps. All right, with that being said, let's go ahead and go to the questions. No questions. You are an incredibly quiet audience. If you have questions, type them into the questions interface. Since we don't have those at the moment, let's go ahead and go to the drawing for the shirt. If you're inside the United States and you want to be in the drawing, I'd like you to type a number into the question interface now from 1 to 100, and I'm going to pick a winner in about 20 seconds. See how on the ball you guys are. Go quick. I'm going to pick a winner in about 5 seconds. All right, got a winner. It's Colton Gerhardt. Colton, I need you to send me an email, and that should go to willc@infowisesolutions.com. That's WILLC@infowisesolutions.com. Now we can go back to the questions. And Colton, let me know your mailing address and shirt size. There's a question about responsive design. Great question. I didn't talk about mobile at all today. And the answer is definitive yes. These are responsive forms. That means that if you open up these forms on a mobile phone, the display will adapt automatically to look appropriate for the mobile device. You can experiment and work with that yourself in the trial, but there are awesome mobile features, so very well set up for that. Got another question. There's a question on pricing that's a little bit outside of the scope of our call. So Adam, if you want to talk more about pricing, the best thing to do would be to set up a demo with us. To answer your question in general terms, for online, it's based on the number of users using the forms. On-premise, it's a bit different. It has to do with how many SharePoint servers that you have. Okay, we've got a question about external forms. Can people add forms can they add files in external forms? Absolutely, 100% they can, Simon. I know this for a fact because I have customers I work with where I've helped them build an applicant tracking system. In that scenario, they're applying for a job and they need to attach their CV and a cover letter and things like that. So I'm 100% certain that that can be done. Is there error logging? Generally, there aren't errors when it comes to this, but occasionally you might have a message. There are logging messages you can look at, for example, email notifications, which we didn't get to. That is a very awesome part about the product. Anything that you do can have an automatic email notification tied to it. Good question on that. There's definitely logging for that part of it. The title at the top of the form, Catherine, that can include anything that you want. Basically, there's an editor that you can use to pick whichever SharePoint fields that you want. Really easy to work with. Basically, you just go into the form designer and I can click on that, edit content. You can see there's the drop down the bottom. I can just insert any of the columns from there. So totally dynamic. Okay, there's an ask for help on how to use associated columns, cascade drop. Okay, so that'd be outside of the webinar. Scott, you should send a support ticket in to Infowise. Could a form be built, pulls from multiple SharePoint? Yeah, again, that's maybe kind of outside the bounds of this topic. Pretty much you can do about everything you can imagine. I build all kinds of solutions with these tools. Certainly you could have multiple data sources and pull that in. All right, sorry, I'm just browsing through some of the questions. You can have forms that interface with other data sources. Again, a little bit outside of that. By the way, if I failed to answer your question or whatever, please feel free to email me direct. We'll see at infowisesolutions.com. I'll give you a more comprehensive answer to that. There's some questions about graphing, which is actually a good segue into the next part of the topic. Okay, so I wasn't able to get to all the questions because we're a little bit limited on time. I've got to get to more content. I appreciate those. If I didn't get to your questions, again, just email me directly. I promise you that I will take the time to give you more detailed response. So thank you for that. All right, so for those of you who want to stick around, we're going to move on to our next topic, which is another tool, which is SharePoint Dashboards. Okay, so this is an additional tool that you could use in addition to Ultimate Forms, and it's really about visualizing data and working on dashboards and KPI indicators and things like that inside your SharePoint environment. You can simply go to this website after the presentation, SharePointDashboards.com, and once you're in there, you can browse the slideshow or go to the gallery by clicking Get Started. And we're going to go through some examples. Some of them we saw in the presentation today. You notice those checkboxes, the edit button, and the progress bar that I was clicking on from the dashboard. That was all done by using these templates. When you get to this page, you'll notice that there are 16 templates you can use without having to sign up or do anything at all. They're completely available to you and free of charge. And I expect that you would find them quite beneficial for your use right away. So we'll look at a couple of those free ones, and then we'll talk a little bit about some of the pro templates that are also out there if you decide to take a next step. Show you a really easy one that I probably use more than anything. That's the edit button. I just clicked on that. We'll talk a little bit about how this tool works. This is like Ultimate Forms, a no-code solution. You can go in here and you'll never have to do any coding or programming whatsoever. This is simply an edit button that you can make appear on your dashboard to take you to the edit form. Those of you guys who use on-premise SharePoint or classic version SharePoint, you know all about that edit link, and they don't have that in modern SharePoint lists, and this is about giving you that capability. Now, all of this is configured by making adjustments on the left side. The first thing I can do is change the themes if I just want to see some examples. And then any of these colors I can change myself. And every time I make an update in here, you'll see it change real time. Just like with the Ultimate Forms in the form preview. I can change anything about it. I can change the text. I'm going to just make a wider button. I can decide whether I want a curved border. I can have a drop shadow under it. I can basically fiddle around with this and keep changing it as much as I want. If I want to have a different hover color or stuff like that, all I have to do is keep fiddling with these settings. And once I'm ready, all I do is hit copy, and then I can go over into SharePoint and it'll appear just like that. So just as an example, I will swap that one. I just hit the copy button right there, and I will go to my projects list. And we're doing column formatting. So I do format this column, just select that and paste, and boom, there you go. There's the new edit button. Okay, so that's how column templates work in modern views in SharePoint. And then let's go ahead and look at another example of that checkbox. That's another free one that you can use as much as you want. So what I can do is scroll through this gallery and kind of find that visually easily. There's the checkboxes template. Just click on that. And all these work the same way. I just work through the controls in the upper left. And when you first arrive at the screen, it's going to show you a preview window to help demonstrate, what does this template do? I just hit stop preview. That shows me kind of a real-time example of what this will look like if I go with what I'm looking at. So, I could do one with light bulbs if I wanted to, or any kind of icons I want. There's actually a huge amount of icons you can use, and there's suggested icons down below, but you can really adjust the look and feel however you want. I can change the size to whatever size I want. I can even adjust the hover color. You see it's set red right now. Just as an example, I'll change one of those checkbox columns to light bulbs just to see what that looks like. I just do copy, come over here, and I'll go to column settings, format this column, and copy paste. And now we're light bulbs. Okay, so it could be anything you want. I'm not suggesting that necessarily look great, but you can understand that's the general concept. I did forget one thing in there. You have to put in the field name. That field's called KO. Let me do it on the complete column. That'll work. All right. Got too many windows open. Okay, so type in the name of the field. Now I can get it. Copy, format this column, and select all and paste, save. Okay, now you got the concept. There, I changed the light bulbs on, light bulbs off, just like that. Really easy. All right, so let's look at some other options that are there. So you can use any of the green free ones. Those are available to you, always will be available to you. The pro templates let you do some more advanced cool stuff. In particular, charting. There's a question on the topic of charting. Ultimate Forms does include charting templates. This tool certainly does quite a lot of that too. Just as an example, I'll go into an example of a bar chart. Now, for the Pro template, you can preview and see how this is going to work. So maybe you want to just see what it is if you're considering getting that, but you're not quite ready yet. Just like the other one, I can do things like change the column width. In fact, I can click on that and I can use my up and down arrows on the keyboard to preview that. I can tweak, like a 3D effect. If you notice, there's kind of like isometric 3D. I can make the bars kind of go up and down, that type of thing. And then I can do things like adjust the min and max values, adjust the row height. Really anything about the look and feel of this that I want to change, I can change really easily. Maybe I don't like the background color. I want it to be a little darker. I can just change that until it looks exactly the way that I want. And only at that point, I just have to do copy and paste one time over to my other view to get what I want to look for. All right, we'll do another example. We'll look at a line chart. So again, I'm just scrolling through my gallery here to look at different options. Okay, here's a preview demonstrating that. What happens is it'll have some sample data at the bottom to kind of illustrate what it might look like. And really everything about this I can change in terms of how it looks. So I can make the font size a little bigger, and it will update real time to show me exactly what that's going to look like. And all I need is a SharePoint list with a series of data. So here's my test data. I have some test values. I can hit the refresh button and get different values. See, it has a little bit of a curved look to it. Maybe I don't like that. If you just want to have a regular old straight line, there's a line curve option. I can set that to 0, and that's more what you're wanting to look at. Maybe I want to see the values on there. If I check the box and show the values, now I can see the values showing on the grid. Maybe this is money. I put in a $sign. Now we can see $signs before the values. So lots of controls, and it's all done visually. I don't have to guess at this. That's really kind of the best part. If I don't understand a setting or I want to tweak something, I can just make small adjustments, and it's going to show me exactly how it's going to turn out. So I can keep playing around with that until I get exactly what I want. Maybe I want a different background gradient. You can see I changed to pink. I can just keep adjusting these settings until I get exactly what I like. I could change the thickness of the line. So right now, I think that is 2. Maybe I want it a little thicker, that type of thing. So this is a really good option. For some of you might use Power BI or have looked at that, and it's really expensive. It's cost prohibitive, and it's very developer oriented, and it's not fast to set up charts with that. This is an option where you can get charting right there inside of your SharePoint interface very quickly without a lot of extra struggle. So really what I would encourage you to do, like the Ultimate Forms, it's really about trying things out to understand how it works. So when you first go in here, if you need help, you should read the instructions. So you want to go to the free templates just to get familiar with those first. There's a help guide which explains to you a little bit about column formatting and view formatting. So you can go to that help section, you can use those templates. And then, as I mentioned, you can browse through the gallery and you can play around with these settings. You can see exactly how all these different types of tools work. So it'll help you understand it really well in case you want to know what it's going to be like before you would take that next step. Devin asked if there's a Gantt option. Yes, there is a Gantt chart. Go through here. There it is. There you go, Devin. There's the Gantt chart. Any other questions? If you guys have questions, just type them in the chat and I can answer questions about SharePoint dashboards. This is definitely priced in a way it's very accessible. You only need one license per person who's going to actually be setting the templates up in SharePoint. So I feel that it's very accessible. And we're all the time adding new templates and features to that. So I definitely feel like it's something that's very accessible. And really, the main thing about this is that you don't have to do any code. Basically, what this tool does is it writes the code for you. So, this is saving you from having to do all of this crazy formatted JSON syntax. It basically does that for you on the fly. You'll never have to do anything with that. You just copy it, paste it, and that's all there is to it. All right. If there are no other questions, we'll stay on and I'll try to answer any remaining questions in the chat for anybody who wants to stick around. I really appreciate everybody joining for today's presentation. I really had fun working on this stuff. Ultimate Forms is a fantastic product. I've been using it for several years. I use it in all my SharePoint solutions for all the customers that I work with. And the visual data management is a big deal. I really find that people don't like those boring gray on white SharePoint list views. So, tapping into some of those extra options like the charting and KPIs and data visualization with SharePoint dashboards is another really fantastic option. So I hope this gives you some ideas. I'll go ahead and stop our recording, but I will stay on chat to try to answer questions and talk with those of you guys who want to stay.